Hey, this is Fivos, and in this video I'm gonna go over the #1 AI appointment booking system in the world. I've used a similar system to this one that I'm gonna go over in this video to book more than 5,000 appointments using voice AI in the last 9 months for client campaigns. But this system is the upgraded version to the one that I was using, and if you stick till the end of this video, you will know how to have an unfair advantage in the marketplace. So this system is fully built on n8n. I'm gonna go over it in this video. And it actually requires minimum setup on your side. I'm gonna go over how it works and why it is set up like that. And the purpose of the system is to book appointments specifically in your GoHighLevel calendar or in your clients' GoHighLevel calendars. And the magic in regards to the system is that it can be connected to any kind of voice agent in any kind of platform, and not only voice agents, but text agents, DM agents, agents on websites. So basically, it's the backend system that can support any kind of AI that books appointments. And in all honesty, actually, I should be selling this system, but I'm giving it away in my school community, Elite Architects. We have 1.2 thousand people right now in it. So if you want the system, join and grab it there. All right, so now let's dive into the system. All right, so now this specific system is actually taking care of two different things. So number one is checking availability in a calendar. And number two is able to book appointments. Okay, so you need one system for both these functions. But in general, what happens when you go and try and book an appointment or check availability in a calendar with different AI setters? Let's say that you say, I'd like to book an appointment for Wednesday. So it will check for Wednesday, right, if there are any slots on Wednesday, and then it will say, sorry, we don't have availability on Wednesday, would you like to check for another day? But actually, an actual person wouldn't do that, right? So an actual person would look at the calendar and say, actually, I see that there is no availability on Wednesday, but how about Tuesday? Can I find availability on Tuesday? Yes, there are available slots on Tuesday, and then it would give those slots, right? Or let's say Tuesday was not available either. It could go back to Monday, or it could check Thursday, Friday, etc. Okay, so the actual problem that we're solving here is user experience, because if the user has a fantastic experience, the appointment is more likely to book, and you're more likely to sell to the business owner that can demo the system and can say, wow, this is really good. And similarly to checking availability, this is the same process basically. And how I have set it up is it checks a day, then if the day is not available, then it checks the previous day. And I don't check the previous day before that if that's not available either, but I check the next week. Okay, so it's basically 3 steps. Check the day, both for booking an appointment and checking availability. It checks the day. If that day is not available, then it checks the previous day, and then it checks the next week. And if the next week is fully booked for whatever reason, that's a high possibility that there is a problem in the calendar. I have had to debug different calendars. And sometimes, like this calendar, for example, right, there is no availability. So the AI sends the link, the booking link after that directly to the person and says, sorry, we're experiencing a technical hiccup right now. I'm just texting you the calendar, and please check that out and book an appointment on your side. All right, so now we're gonna demo the system. Hi, can I check availability for this Wednesday?
Let me check that for you. I checked Wednesday, but unfortunately we're fully booked that day. On Tuesday, we have a few openings, 9 a.m., 12:30 p.m., or 3 p.m. Would any of those times work for you?
No, not really. Can you check this upcoming Sunday?
Okay, let me check that for you. Unfortunately, there aren't any times available this upcoming Sunday. However, Monday and Tuesday have plenty of openings throughout the day from morning into the evening. Would either of those days work for you?
I think next Monday would work. What are the available slots?
Okay, let me check that for you.
Yeah.
Next Monday looks pretty open. We've got a few morning slots, such as 8:30 a.m., 9 a.m., or 10:30 a.m. Would you like to go with any of these?
Yes, let's go with next Monday, 10:30 a.m.
Yes, please give me a sec. Your appointment is booked for 10:30 a.m. next Monday. If there's anything else you need, feel free to let me know.
All right, so that was the demo, and as you can see that the appointment setter is not very stuck in a very specific day and is able to move throughout the weeks, and basically this is how a human would do it. Okay, yeah, so now let's go back to n8n. All right, so the first thing that I'll do is I'll explain why I did not create this workflow using an agent. Okay, so agents are amazing. They're able to do a lot of stuff and a lot of reasoning and triggering of tools, but sometimes it's better to create the workflows with reasoning and with steps, okay, not with an agent. So the problem that I was running into creating this specific workflow with an agent is that there is something that is called rate limits. Okay, and rate limits is basically when you're calling an API too fast or too many times, and then you're hitting that limit, and then that API starts failing. So what was happening here is that the agent would, let's say that the agent would get the desired date, right? And then after the desired date, it would go and it would call, let's say, the get contact person to see if that phone number is already in high level. Then it would call the get free slots, and then it would call again another high level step, and it would call basically the GoHighLevel API very fast, one after the other, and then it would fail. So if you have something like that, and if the agent is calling the tools very fast, especially for the tools that actually have rate limits that that agent might surpass, then you just don't create a solution based on an agent. Okay, and this is why I created it based on an actual flow. And I'm gonna go over the flow, but I actually wanna show you that after the high level steps, I have a wait step always. And this is one of the ways to not hit rate limits. If you have a wait step after a specific step, which is, let's say, high level over here, and again before the next high level step. Okay, so the way that I have created this workflow is to make it very easy on the agency side to plug it into their system, and then basically to use it for any kind of setter. That can be a voice setter, that can be a DM setter, again, any kind of setter that might use GoHighLevel in the background. Okay, so there is minimal setting up on the agency side, and I have made it very easy over here in the initial steps to set up on your side. Okay, but before I go into the actual setup over here and how the workflow works and the reasoning, I'm gonna go over to Vapi and I'm gonna explain the tools that we need in order to add them into this workflow. So we have two tools. One tool is gonna be the calendar availability tool, and the other one is gonna be the booking appointment tool. Okay, and this is the magic around this workflow. We need just one workflow that's gonna do two things at the same time on the back end. And by the way, Vapi has these different functionalities like search contact or create contact or check availability, get free slots on a calendar, or book an appointment. But the problem is that first of all, it's not that great of a user experience. It doesn't check after around the week. This is number one. Number two is that if you're using one specific Vapi account, and let's say you're managing different clients, you can only use one GoHighLevel sub account at this time with Vapi. So this is the problem that this workflow solves. All right, so now let's go over to Vapi, and we're gonna go over to tools. So we basically have two different tools over here, as I said. One is gonna be called calendar availability, and the other one is gonna be called booking appointment. Okay, so just to showcase the whole procedure, I'm gonna just create tools from the very beginning. Again, the first tool is gonna be called booking appointment, just because I already have this tool, booking appointment. I'm just gonna name it booking appointment 2. The description is trigger this tool when the user wants to book an appointment. Then the parameters, a parameter is basically something that the tool carries along from the conversation with the user to your backend. Okay, so for the booking appointment, the parameter that we need, you click on add property, and then we need the appointment booking time. So I'll just say appointment time. It's gonna be string. String is basically a phrase, and then the description is gonna be the phrase the user says for when he would like to book an appointment. Okay, and then you click on required. All right, and you click on apply. Then we need a server URL. A server URL is basically where you're sending the data. So basically a webhook, right? Now we have the scenario activated. I'm gonna deactivate the scenario, and how it works on n8n is that when you deactivate the scenario, there are basically two webhook URLs over here. One is the test URL, one is the production URL. When the scenario is deactivated, then the test URL is the one that is valid. And when the scenario is activated over here, then the one that is valid is the production URL. Now, the good thing with n8n is that the test URL and the production URL are the exact same URLs, with the only difference over here that the test URL has this -test right after webhook, and the production URL doesn't have that. So it's basically the exact same URL. All right, so we're gonna go back to Vapi. We're gonna paste the webhook URL over here, and as you can see, is the test URL. Then the next thing that we need for now, and this is what I do in general, is when these different tools are triggered, this is again to create the most human-like experience and the best user experience on the other side. So when these tools are triggered, the AI says a specific message most of the times, right? So there is a default message which is please hold on or something like that. Then you can choose none, so no message will be spoken. This again on Vapi, right? So I use Vapi a lot. Most of the times I customize the message. So for an appointment, I think what makes most sense to be spoken out by the AI. So I would say, for example, please hold on a second, something like that. Okay, cool. Then we click on save. All right, so Vapi again looks like it's bugging. Okay, so I'm clicking on save and it's not doing it. Vapi is bugging. I'm not gonna create these tools again. Sometimes Vapi for whatever reason decides, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, so this is number one. But what I will do, because I have already two tools over here, is I'm gonna change the URL to the test URL. I'm gonna click on save. Great. Next one, test. Cool. And the second tool, again, it's the description of the tool is trigger this tool to check for calendar availability. Then the parameter that we're passing along is basically something that I've named availability request. And again, it's the phrase the user says for when he or she would like to check availability for. Okay, and again, it's a string, has to be required, and we have the test server URL. Okay, and one more thing that I'd like to explain in regards to the tools is the fact that the description, oh wow, look at this, I made a mistake here. So the description is going to be the phrase on date or date and time the user wants to book the appointment for. Okay, so it's actually the phrase. Okay, so the reason that I say the phrase is because when the AI triggers a tool, it will pass along very specific parameters to the backend system that you have, and it will pass along the parameters based on the description and how you have described that specific parameter. So the problem that we're running into, if we name the parameters, let's say the date, and this is what's happening a lot. I'm helping different agencies with their systems. What I'm seeing is sometimes the agency might describe the tool like the date and time the user wants to book an appointment for. All right, so a tool described like this might have a result like this. Now, the reason that this happens is that Vapi doesn't actually know the time. They don't have something integrated at this moment to know the time. So that's a bit of a limitation, but we are actually getting the time with the next steps that I have over here. Okay, so what we want to do is we don't want to have the date and time. We want to have the phrase the user says on the date and time the user wants to book an appointment for. Okay, a description like this will give us a result like this tomorrow at 5 p.m. Okay, and this is what we need over here. And it's the exact same thing with the calendar availability request. Let's go back to Vapi, and I think we have everything that we need here. So before I actually trigger the tools and show you how to set up the initial mapping over here, I'll show you how to connect GoHighLevel with n8n because there is a bit of a process to connect it. Okay, so what you need to have is you need to have a marketplace account with GoHighLevel. I'm already logged in, but if you don't have an account, then you basically go to marketplace.gohighlevel.com, and then over here you go to create app. So you would go with enter app name, and then you would say, for example, n8n GoHighLevel, something like that, however you want to name it. Okay, then you click on create app. Actually, there is a guide from n8n over here. So I'm already logged in over here. I have created a credential, but if you don't have the connection, you need to click on create new credential. Cool, and then let's open docs. This is something that n8n does very well, which is for any kind of connection with an application. They have created a documentation that is very step-by-step and very easy to follow. So we're gonna go with using OAuth 2. Okay, so OAuth is basically a secure connection with another application that you give access to that application without giving your passwords directly to that application. Okay, so basically, as it says here, to configure this credential, you need to create a client ID and a client secret. Okay, cool. So basically, we go to Marketplace, we go to Advanced Settings, we go to Authorization. Then we select the scopes, which is locations read-only. Basically, these 6 scopes that we have here. Okay, locations read-only. Next one is, okay, context read-only, contacts right, opportunities read-only, opportunities right, and then users read-only. Okay, cool. After you've done that, then the redirect URL is gonna be the URL that is given over here. So you basically click on it and then you copy it and then you put it over here. That's great. And then you click on add at the redirect URL. Fantastic.
Now, I'm pretty sure you have to click on it, but we can't click on it yet. You need to go to add over here, and you can name the client key however you want. You can say n8n connection. And then you have the client ID and the client secret. I would highly suggest that you put both of them in a very secure file. And this is what I do, in a very secure file somewhere, either in a Google Drive folder or something like that, so that you don't forget them. Okay. But for demonstration purposes here, I don't need to do that. I'm gonna anyways delete this right after this video. So you basically put your client ID here and the client secret right underneath, right? Then the scope, you basically need to take these 6 scopes. Scope is the amount of access that you give to an application. So you basically would take all of these ones, you copy them, and then you drop them here, okay? And then you click on connect my account. Then you get redirected. It will ask you to log into your CRM to continue. Here we go. And then you go back to the marketplace. Cool. And then we will click on next. You have to save it. And then let's click on this one, this little circle over here. Great. And then you connect your sub account and the connection is successful. Then we go back to n8n and now we're connected. Okay. So for demonstration purposes, I'm going to go back to the initial account that I have over here. Great. And we're connected. All right. So now I'll show you the initial mapping that the agency must do in the very beginning. Okay. So the way that we get information in the workflow and data to be mapped in the actual n8n workflow is to trigger the tools. Okay. And the way that we trigger tools is very simple. We basically have to talk to the AI. Hi, I'd like to check availability.
Sure. Could you please specify the day you would like to check availability for?
Yes, I'd like to check availability for this Monday.
Okay, let me check that for you. For this Monday, we have available slots at 9 a.m. Any of these times work for you?
So for me, as you can see, mine is pretty set up, but it also depends what kind of AI you're using on the backend. So if you're using Vapi, you will not need to do much here in the very beginning. If you're using another type of AI, or if you're using DM or text setters or something like that, then you will need to map something. So the very first thing that you need to map is the phone number over here. Okay. So basically you trigger the tool and you pass along the phone number. Okay. Now, if you're triggering the tools with DM setters or something like that, then you need to specify in the tool triggering to pass along the phone number. But if you're using something like voice AI, you don't need to do that because the user or you are already calling the AI. So there is a phone number there. So in this case, let's say if I didn't have this here, what I would do is actually I would go to the search button over here and I would say actually customer. Cool. And then I would drag the phone number over here. Fantastic. So this is number 1. Number 2, very important, is your high level sub accounts time zone. So you would go to settings. So you will need to input in that step your GoHighLevel time zone. Okay. So my time zone is Europe/London, but you can have any kind of time zones. Okay. So if your time zone is US/Eastern, or if your time zone is this one, you would just take the phrase US/Eastern exactly as you can see it here, and then you would basically just write it out over here. And this is what I have written, Europe/London, and this is how I have configured this specific step. Then the next step that you need to set up is the routing based on the tool that was triggered. Okay, so there are 2 different outcomes. There is the calendar availability checking and there is the booking an appointment. So the way that I have separated this is basically from the name of the tool. So one is booking appointment, the other one is calendar availability. So the first tool in its name contains booking and the other one contains availability. And it's also case sensitive, so make sure that you take that into consideration. And the way that you map this specific value is you go back to the webhook, you search for name, and yeah, you take this name as you can see over here and you drop it, okay, in the routing rule. And you take this exact value again, the name, and you drop it here too. So if the name contains booking or whatever you put as your tool names, then it routes it into the booking function. And if the name contains availability, it gets routed into the availability function. So one particularity here is that this specific structure, right, that arrives to this webhook is from Vapi. So different tools, again, or different AIs or different platforms have different structures. So basically you just need to find the exact name. And again, that can be directly from a custom GPT. And I will show you in one of the next videos how to do that with a custom GPT. So basically, you just find the name of the tool and you drop it here into both fields over here. Cool. And obviously, it's expression. Expression is basically when you map something and it's not a static value. Okay. All right. So next thing that you will need to map is the booking request value over here. And we have named it booking request. And the value that needs to be mapped over here is the actual phrase. Okay. In Vapi, that would be again under tool calls, function arguments, and then the actual value. But in this case, we don't really know if the argument is going to be availability request or booking request. So we map the actual argument above it. So there is always an argument, especially if you're using Vapi. If you're using some sort of other tool or tool structure, there's going to be some senior variable to the variable that you want to map. Okay, so whatever is the senior variable to that other immediate variable, which is either availability request or booking request, then you map that one. Okay, and you map that senior variable in the JSON or the parent variable, whatever it's called, similarly to the availability request too. Okay, then over here, I'm going to explain the rationale of this scenario, and you will just need to understand how it works and just a few tweaks that you will need to do yourself. Okay, so for get many contacts, it's basically a search function. We'll limit the contacts to 1, and we're trying to get the contact with that specific phone number. So we have mapped over here the phone number of the person. And you don't need to change anything over here because this value from this phone number is already mapped from the setup that you did in the beginning. So you don't need to change anything on this step. Then we have an if-else condition. If the phone number exists inside high level, that means that you already have that contact in high level. So if it exists, we go ahead and we take via code. I was doing that via AI in the past, but lately I've been doing this via code because it's way more reliable to do it via code than via AI. And we are booking the appointment. Now, if the contact doesn't exist, then we need to create the contact. And again, you don't need to change anything here other than your connection, right? So you need to make sure that you have the right connection to this high level node, but you don't need to change anything here because again, we are mapping from user phone number, which you have set up already. Now, something kind of particular over here that with undefined is that this specific high level node, for whatever reason, needs phone number plus email to create the contact. Okay. In general, high level says that you can either use phone number or you can either use email, and then you can create the contact. And this is how it happens in make.com. So if you're using make.com, you only need one or the other. In this case, we have the phone number. So it should be able to go ahead and create a contact, but for whatever reason, n8n doesn't do it. So I need to put an undefined variable over here, which makes it so the node doesn't fail. So having an undefined variable over here is actually the correct thing in this case. Okay, and again, I would not suggest you capture the user's email via voice AI. You can totally do it via a DM setter, and if you do it via a DM setter, like a text setter, then you can for sure map the email over here. Okay, but if you're using voice, just leave it like that. Then the code, you don't need to know much about it. Again, you get everything in my school community first, link in the description below, which basically the code, what the code does is it takes the phrase that the person said, in this case over here, back at the booking request node, and basically formats it in a way that high level accepts appointments to be pushed into the platform. Cool. So next step after this is again one manual setup step from your side to send the appointment into high level. It's basically an HTTP request to book the appointment into high level. The reason that we're doing this is because there is a particularity with high level and with the appointment booking into high level with using a high level node that I'm not going to go over it right now, but it's better to do it via HTTP request. And by the way, just to give you some more understanding, this is also an HTTP request, even if it looks like it's a high-level node. This is an HTTP request. All high-level nodes and everything basically in these automations platforms are HTTP requests. Now, HTTP request is basically a request that happens over the internet into a different application. So we have n8n over here, and we have high-level, which is a different application to n8n. And an HTTP request is basically a request to do a bunch of different actions like send data, get data, change data, like delete data. There are different requests, different types of requests, In this case, we're doing a post request. Okay, so we're sending. Post means send. And over here, we're sending headers, right? One header is going to be authorization, and the value of that header is going to be bearer and your GoHighLevel API key, okay, which I'll show you right now how to create it. Again, in general, you don't share your API keys, and this is a demo API key, so I'm going to delete that. And then there is a version and this value, which you shouldn't change it. Okay, so the way that you're creating these API keys into your high-level account is you go to that specific sub account that you want to set up the API key into. Then you click on private integrations. Then you would click on create new integration. Then name it however you want, demo n8n. Next, for appointment booking, the scopes that you need over here, again, scope says the amount of access that you give an external application to your application is edit calendar events, and you click on create, and then you would have your API key over here. You would copy that, then you would go to n8n and you would paste it right here. Great. And then you have to get your calendar ID and your location ID. Okay, and you don't need to change anything regarding the contact ID or the start time that I have over here. Now for calendar ID, you would go to calendars, calendar settings, and I have the demo calendar over here, and you can see that demo calendar has an ID. So you would copy this ID over here. You would paste it here. I already have it here. And then the location ID is your sub account's ID. So it's this one. Okay, so you would copy this and you would drop it right here. And then basically you put it over here. Okay, then very important. Then you don't need to care much about these two. Actually, you don't need to really worry about the switch function over here. So basically that means that if the appointment was booked, it goes up to the respond to the webhook, because we send the data via the webhook, and then there is a webhook response. So let me just explain what happens here. So we're having the user over here, this very nice user, and we're having the AI over here on the other side. Now the user says something to the AI, and the AI, let's say this is the webhook, the AI triggers this webhook and sends data to this webhook, which part of the data is, in this case, the appointment booking time. Let's say this is the appointment booking time, or the availability request. And these data arrive over here, which is n8n. Okay, the webhook at n8n. Now, these data travel along another string of steps, which is our n8n workflow. And then, based on what happens, there is a webhook response, which the webhook response basically responds back to the webhook, to the initial webhook that we send the data to. And then that gives basically the response to the AI, so that the AI can speak out this response either via text or via phone call. Okay, so if the appointment is booked, this is what happens over here. And this is the way that Vapi likes it and Vapi wants it. If you're using Vapi, then don't change anything over here. Literally just leave it exactly as it is. Now, one note that I have over here regarding other types of AI that you might be using is that if you're using Retell or ChatGPT agent, or different other agents, there are a bunch of agents and a bunch of platforms, and different platforms again might have different types of structure in regards to the webhook response that they want. If it is Retell or ChatGPT, the response to webhook is going to have to be just this exact structure. Okay, so you would delete the whole thing that I have over here, and then you would basically say, perfect, your appointment is booked for requested time. Okay, yeah, but this is how Vapi likes it. Okay, so this is a very fast comment for webhook responses. Now, the way that I have created the workflow here is that if the appointment request fails, specific time is not available, then it goes to another code step, which actually defines the time range of the previous day. Now, after the range is defined, again, it's a coding step. So to be honest, I don't even know exactly what all of this stuff means, but you can use AI to create a bunch of coding these days. And then that new range gets fed again to the get free slots of a specific calendar. Okay, now again, that calendar needs to be mapped over here. I might need to add that in the very beginning so that you don't need to map again and again. And probably this is what I'm going to do. So if you're going to probably find a calendar mapping in the very beginning. Okay, so you will just need to map that. And in my community, I'm gonna post a video. I'm gonna give you this template. If I change anything, I'm gonna give an explainer video right then and there. Cool. Then you don't need to change anything else over here. So just leave it exactly as it is. Cool. and then we have an if-else condition. So if we have slots available the previous day, those specific slots get fed to an agent or to a ChatGPT step, and that ChatGPT step speaks out the response, and then the webhook responds back, and then the webhook response again gets fed to the agent, which is spoken out to the user. Now, if it is false, and again, the previous day doesn't have any availability, we have a wait step over here. And the wait step is very important because we don't want to hit the rate limits of high level. If we hit the rate limits of high level, then this whole thing will fail. And then you don't have an appointment setter and it's going to be all weird. Okay, cool. We have the wait step for 2 seconds, and then the same phrase gets fed to another code step, which defines the next week's range, the next 7 days range. And then again, the next 7 days range gets fed to another high level step over here. You don't need to do anything other than map the calendar ID, or if I create the very initial mapping, then you don't need to even change that. And if there are available slots in the next week, then that gets fed into an agent, and then the agent speaks it out again, okay, the next week. Now, if there are no available slots next week, so we try to check the same day, okay, we didn't find any available slots in that same day. We tried to check the day before, again, we didn't find any available slots the day before. Then we tried to check the next week. Now that might be a technical hiccup with the calendar, and I had to debug different calendars with different problems. But what I do in this step is we are trying to search the contact. Okay, we're searching the contact. You don't need to do anything here. Based on that phone number, if we find the contact, then we update the contact and we add a very specific tag to the contact, which this tag is gonna trigger a high-level workflow to send them a text. So that workflow on high-level side is going to be very simple. We have just a trigger. In this case, it's text calendar link. Then I just wait for just a few seconds, and then we send them an SMS, which in this case is, hey, sorry, the calendar is acting up on my side. Please book a meet on your side. Here it is. And we drop the high-level calendar that we want to book the appointment in. Now, this is if the contact exists. If the contact doesn't exist, then we create or update the contact, and you don't need to do anything on that other than add the tag over here. And basically the response to the webhook is, you know what, I was trying to find my availability, but looks like there is a technical glitch on my side. I'm sending you a text. Can you book it on your side? And I use Discord a lot. I have my server, which I manage clients. I do different things there. And I have created a potential error notification. So basically, I have potential error in appointment booking flow. Check it out as soon as possible. And I feed this specific value over here, which is this execution that happened over here, so that I see, okay, is there a problem with the calendar or what was the problem? So if you're using Discord, you can just use this specific setup that I have over here. If you're using, let's say, Slack or something else, then you will need to modify this step. And this is basically the fail-proof system for booking appointments into high level that creates a very fantastic user experience. And that's pretty much it. If you want to grab this template, join my school community. First link in the description below, and I'll see you in the next video.